Okay, this is lecture 42, and the subject that I'm going to deal with today is on pi, the number pi, the transcendental number, the power to bend. Okay, it's the power of that curve. Any curve that you see in nature, or you draw a curve, has something to do with pi. To calculate its curvature, you need to know pi. So pi, pi, is 16 and 9. If I add those together, I get 25, and bend is 25, placement value. So pi is the number I call the power to bend, because without pi we will live in a sort of two-dimensional world. Not even that, one-dimensional, a line. A line is, in Hebrew, the word for line is kav. It's a line, and the letter that represents the line, the kav, is the letter nun. It goes below the line. It's a long letter. Here's the yud, here's the vav, and there's the line. Yavan is the Hebrew for Greece. It's also the Hebrew for mud, and you can see you're sinking down and going deeper, deeper down. But the final nun is the letter for that represents a line, and of course nun, if I write it out and spell it as a word, the letter nun is 50 plus 6 plus 50, and add that, I get 106. That's in the normal value. That's 56 and 50. And kuf is 100, and vav is 6 in the normal value, so that's 106 as well. So the kav, 106, the letter nun is 106, represents a line. So what does it do with pi? We'll see in a minute. Now, what I'm going to talk about is actually where pi is in the Bible. And I'm going to show where it is actually in the first verse of the Torah, Bereshit, the very first verse of the Bible. But before I do that, I'm going to examine what is called the Sea of King Solomon, Yam Shel Shlomo HaMelech, the Sea of King Solomon. You will find it in 1 Kings chapter 7 verse 23, and you'll find exactly word for word the same account of the making of this yam in Chronicles 2 chapter 4 verse 2. Well, 3 verses of those. That particular verse that I quoted from each of those, from the Kings and from Chronicles, talk specifically about pi. So what this sea was as follows. It was a hemisphere. So the hemisphere, you see pictures of this. You can go to Wikipedia. You can just search for King Solomon's Sea, the Sea of King Solomon, and you'll see pictures of which don't seem to look anything much like that. What is actually described. What is described is a hemisphere which is 10 amot. An amma is about 18 inches. It's one of the, an amma is basically from, I think from fingertips to the elbow. I'm a small guy, okay? So about a foot and a half. And so it was 10 ammas across, and looking down, it was 30 amot around. So it's not very clear. 30 amot around, going round. So it's quite big actually, because 10, about foot and a half, that's about 15 feet across, and 30 times a foot and a half is 45 feet around. Okay, and you can look up in mathematical history books or online. You see what pi comes to with that. The pi. The formula we have for the circumference, C, equals pi times d, or d pi, pi times d. Therefore pi would equal the circumference divided by the diameter. That will give us 30 divided by 10, which is 3. And that's pretty crude, and historians look at that and say, well, you know, King Solomon, the wisest of men, didn't seem to have a very good number for pi. So let me just read you what I've got from Wikipedia. It's called the Approximation of Pi. This is on an article about the Sea of King Solomon. So this is the biblical description that the bowl has a diameter of 10 cubits and a circumference of 30 cubits, suggests that in the construction of the basin, pi was approximated with the integer value 3. This is consistent with the practice of Babylonian mathematics at the time, which I can't really verify, in the 6th century BC, but it has given rise to a debate in rabbinical Judaism from an earlier period due to the concern that the biblical text might here be inaccurate. Okay, so the biblical text is inaccurate, and therefore we have to assume that King Solomon got it right, but the numbers aren't really quite what should be. Then there's this rabbi called Rabbi Nehemiah in the 2nd century. He argued that the text is not claiming that pi equals 3, but that instead the Hebrews measured the diameter from the outside edge of the rim of the bowl, while the circumference was measured from under the rim being like a lip, right? So when you put a string around the outside, it wasn't from the edge of the lip, it was from the actual around the basin, ignoring the width of the basin itself, the metal, which was brass. So the measure, since it cannot be measured according along the outside edge of the rim, because it will just fall off, after accounting for the width of the brim, about a handbreadth, this results in a ratio closer to the true value of pi, taking a cubit to be 18 inches and a handbreadth to be 4 inches, something like that. The ratio of the described dimensions of the bowl differs from pi by less than 1%, and I've written down a calculation of that, which gives me 3.1395. 3.1395 to the second decimal place will be 3.14. So that's pi to two decimal places, which is we've got 3.14159, which I'll give you to 5 decimal places. So 3.14 is pretty accurate. Probably sufficiently accurate to actually make a circle of that scale. However, I'm going to show you that King Solomon knew it to 4 decimal places. So how do I get there? So these two texts, Chronicles and Kings, there is a subtle difference between the two texts, because in the book of Kings, the word for the line, kav that goes around, it's called a line that goes around the basin. The word for kav is spelled kuf vav hey. It's got an extra letter in it, spelled like this. If you go to the book of Chronicles, it's spelled like this. Now every word is exactly the same. So whoever wrote Chronicles or whoever wrote King got from one to the other. But for some reason, when they wrote the word kav, they put a, what have I done? Whoops. Right, so this is in Kings, and this is in Chronicles. Okay? There it's spelled kav as it's normally spelled, kav. And here it's spelled kava with a hey. And we just saw that kav is 106. And kava with a hey, which is 5, is 111. Now, if I take these two values, this is not my idea, this goes back to a rabbi called the Vilna Gaon, who about 180 years ago, he writes about this, and you get 111, if I divide it by 106, and then multiply it by 3, I will get 3.1415 and a few other digits afterwards. And I'll get it actually, if you ignore the others, you get 4 digits, 4 decimal places, which is even more accurate. Now I'll show you where this is in the story, in the creation, because this is my idea, because I felt that, you know, creation, lots of curves, circles, it must be part of the creation story. There must be hidden within the text of the Bible the number pi. In fact, not only that, the number phi is there. I've got two slideshows. This is one on pi, which I'm taking some of this from. This is on my website. You can download it as a slideshow. It's a PowerPoint. Not good for the Mac. I've tried it on my Mac laptop and it's distorted. The PowerPoint doesn't seem to line up. Sometimes the columns of numbers that I give are not in line. But on my PC it seems to work quite well, even though this is quite an old edition of Pi. I did this a long time ago, or of PowerPoint. And this is the one on phi, which is also on my website. It's a bit longer than the other one, and I show how these two are linked together. The two numbers are actually linked together. What's very strange is that the number for pi, I'll just tell you this as a thought for your mind. The number for pi, and the pi is about the bend, the curvature, right? So what is it? It's pi. It's like a Stonehenge. It's a rectangle. Where phi is based on the golden rectangle. To calculate it, it's all a ratio. I won't go into it now. But it's based on the rectangle. The phi spiral is based on the phi rectangle, because we break up the rectangle into different sections, and you can then draw the phi spiral. But it's based on a rectangle. Yet the letter for phi is basically a circle and a line through it. So that's a thought. So these are the two. Phi, high phi, there we are. And this was pi in the sky. Pi, by the way, is spelled P-I-E. Yeah, you know, there's a English colloquial phrase. You know, something is almost impossible. We talk about it being pie in the sky. Pi is spelled P-I-E, where E is the fifth letter, just like hey is the fifth letter. And the link between these two, I show in my slideshow. Why it's particularly that, and why pi is actually connected to hope, because the word kaver means hope. The Israeli national anthem is called the Ha-Tikva. Tikva comes from hope. This is the root, kva, right? Kaveh el Hashem, it says in Psalms, so hope for Hashem. So we don't give up hope. Nothing's a pie in the sky. Okay, so in the first verse of the Torah, the verses are in Hebrew, Bereshit, in the beginning, bara, he created, Elohim. I'm going to put a line there because I don't want to write God's name on the wall. So there we have, in the beginning, Bereshit, bara, created, Elohim. God created in the beginning. So we're going to use 3 as the code, and we're going to count 3 letters. 1, 2, 3, and we get an aleph, and the aleph is worth 1. Then it's 1, 2, 3, which is a taf, and taf has a normal value of 400, but its small value is 4. We knock off the zeros, so it has a small value of 4, from 400 to 4, or its placement value is 22, and 2 and 2 is 4, which gives the small value as well, either way. Then we count another 3 letters, 1, 2, 3, and we get, put an arrow there, we get a 1. Not very organised. There we are, put the 4 up there, and then we've got 1 there, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, and we've got 5. So now what have I got? I've got 1, 4, 1, 5. 1, 4, 1, 5, with a 3 at the beginning as our code, 1, 4, 1, 5. Which is pi to 4 decimal places, and I go on in this slideshow to show it to 9 decimal places with a special formula of the significance of the letter mem, which is really square, the final mem, and I show how that, using that with the as a code, we can get to 9 decimal places. I've got more research to do on that. I'm transferring this into a book, which is not yet completed, and it will probably be more stuff than what's in here. So as I discover more things. So now, the Yam Shemelech was, the word Yam is connected to a circle. So it's called a Yam because that basin was filled up with water. So Yam is spelled like that, and that's 10, and that's 40, which is 50. Okay, that's normal values. and we've had before that circle in my lecture on circles is 50, okay, and that's the placement value. So there is a link between yum and C. Of course, the word yum in English is C, okay, and that is 19, 19th letter, 5 and 1 is 25, which is half of 50, which is a semicircle, because that's what was made. That was a hemisphere, but looking straight at it is a half a circle, semicircle, and since that's half of 50, that's C, 25. Of course, we had pi before. Pi is 16 plus 9 was 25, which was bend, okay, and that of course is C, so that's also connected. And Kav, that's the 19th letter, and that's Vav, Kuf is the 19th, Vav is the 6th letter, and that equals 25. So we can see that the word Kav, which means a line, is connected to pi. The significance is more than that, which is also connected to C, okay? But the significance is more than that because, let me just rub this off to show you something very interesting. Okay, pi and Kav. Can you see something there? That the Kuf looks a bit like the P, and the letter Vav looks like an I. So we have two letters in the Hebrew representing two letters in the English. The Kuf P, the Vav is the I. So what is this all about? Is this something more deeper that we need to know about that's hidden all this? Let me just show you something, a little bit of an Einstein theory of general theory of relativity, you can say. When it talks about, well, is there such a thing as gravity? Einstein says that really it's a warping of the space. Does light travel in a straight line? No, in fact, light can actually go around in a curve, and it will go around the curve when it goes past a very heavy object like the sun. And he was proved to be right because they could actually see stars that shouldn't be visible behind the sun, because the light would curve around the sun and they can actually see what was behind the sun. So we can see that light travelling, which we normally say travels in a straight line, bends. So we'll take the word line, and we'll find the normal value. L is 30, N is 50, and 5. That will give you, excuse me, 94. That's the normal value. I don't know if you can see that. It needs a better green pen. Wait a moment. Try this one. And then we have an arc. Oh, that's better. Arc is 1, that's 90, and that's 3 in terms of normal values, right, which is 94. So we see that both line and arc in normal values are the same, 94. So they're not different. So a line can be part of a giant circle. How do you know your line is absolutely straight? We can only, by our eyes, see a line. Now, same thing with parallel lines. We say parallel lines do not meet. But how do you know? You've got to go to infinity to work out. So a line can be just a part of a very giant circle. So it's deceptive. Line and circle come together. Okay. So let's just now examine what the message is behind this. I'll just do one more interesting thing about the circle, about the yum. So let's just do this, and then so going back to the yum is the C in Hebrew. Yum. So that's 10 and that's 40. We go to the normal inner values. We extend that. So the word 10 is 39 and 40 is 84. And I add those together, I will get 123. And that is the same as circumference. Circumference in placement values is 123 PV. Okay, that's using the normal inner value. So we see there's a connection between yum and circumference. And there is yet another connection there. No, that's okay. Right. Okay, so now we're going to show you what the message is. So before I do that, there's one other thing I need to cover, which is linked to this message. The whole thing is the fact that this yam rested on 12 oxen. So, the question, what was this yam used for? Some say it was used for people to bathe in. The Kohen, the priest, would bathe in it. But perhaps it had another purpose. One doesn't normally make something which is a sphere. And we're talking about a real sphere, so you have to read the text and you'll see that it's just a hemisphere, because it says distinctly that it's 5 amas, 10 amas, 5 amas. This is a hemisphere. You'll see some drawings of it like that, but no, that's not what it was. It's an actual hemisphere, and that's quite deep and a bit difficult to get in and out, as far as I can see. 5 amas, that's 5 feet, 7.5 feet. You've got to get in that and get out of it. But as I say, it could well have been used for bathing in. Perhaps it was also used as a telescope. Perhaps it was used as a magnifying glass. I discussed a little bit of that in here, but something that I'm still researching on about this sea, because the oxen that are around it, there's 12 oxen. One immediately thinks about the constellations around the heavens, the zodiac, and one could think about maybe something to do with time, the hours in the day. 12 is quite a significant number, both in Judaism and Christianity. We have the 12 sons of Jacob, we have the 12 disciples of Jesus. So 12, and of course you've got the 12 Olympians, which I write about in my book, the sign of Zion, about the Olympic Games. So let's just have a look at a little bit about these oxen. The word ox is a circle. It's a circle and a cross, right? So you look like a bullseye, a focus point, right? You can imagine you can have a hemispherical mirror, and you might have a mirror at the top there, at the focal point. You might be able to get heat from here, from the sun, and create fire on the altar from the mirror. Comes down. That's if it's used as a lens. If it's used as a radio, sort of not radio, optic sort of telescope, then maybe you can see constellations from it. You can see at night time. You can see, use the mirror and look into the sky and do whichever astrological viewings you want to do, or astronomical viewings you want to do. So there you have an ox. If I take the normal value, O is 60 and X is 600, I get 660. Okay? Connected that, let's now divide that into 12 parts, because the oxen were around in 12, so I've got 660, and I'm going to divide that by 12, and I'll get 55. 55 is the placement value of heaven, PV, and it's also the same placement value as sky, because you look up in the sky, you're looking up into heaven, okay, and that's where all the stars are. And interestingly enough, the word oxen is 58, star is 58, and zodiac is also 58. So this connection between the oxen and the zodiac is shown within the gematria. Okay, so now we're going to show how this is all something to do with Mashiach, Messiah. Would you believe that? And it gets really kind of deep into this, because this is like looking into the stars and predicting the future. So, but just a little bit on this. If we take Mashiach, the Hebrew word Mashiach, Mem, usually do the block, not the script. So there's the block. Mem, Shin, Yud, Chet. So we know that's 40, that's 300, these are the normal values, 10 and 8 gives you 358. And then if I extend this into the normal inner values, 40 is 84, 300 is 130, 10 is 39, 8 is 49, add that together, I get 1822, I get 8 and 2 is 10, and another 10 is 20, I get 302. So now I'm going to add those, the normal value and the extension of the normal inner values, I will get 660 ox. Okay? So we see there's a connection between the ox and Mashiach. Mashiach is not an ox, just don't go away thinking that. But this is how Gematria works in showing us deeper understanding. Let me just show you an interesting word, yam. The word yam, the sea, I'll write it down like that. Well, actually, don't need to do it that way. So I need to yam. Okay, so it's got a placement value. It's got a normal value of 50, which we had before. That's 40 and 10. Okay, is 50. And V, and it's got a large value where U becomes 39 because 10 is 39, and 13 is the mem, 13th letter. 13 is 99. And that gives you 138. 138, if I add those together, I will get 188. And then, if I work out what 188 is in words, I'll get 250. And then I add those two together, I'll get 438, which is Messiah in large values. We've had that number before. 438 Messiah in large values. So I've taken this sum, found its what I call this soul value, and added the body and soul value together, which you've seen before, get the number which is connected to Messiah. That's a little bit out of the way, but the significance of the Messiah comes a little bit more obvious when I show you a few things. And that is that pi, if we use again the large values, this is the large value, I use a large value here. P is 16, the 16 is 96. Let's use a different colour. 96. And I is 9, and 9 is 42. Add those together, I get 138. So we see how pi is connected to the yam. And now they do it in Hebrew. Kav. Kuf is 19. And 19 is 86. Vav is 6, 6 is 52, I get 138. So I get both Kav and pi, 138, and yam, all the large values, all using the large values, but all equal 138. And what was 138 in my last lecture? Menachem, which was, I heard on the dreidel. Menachem was one of the names given to Mashiach, 138 in the normal value. So we see this number comes up twice. We get the idea of the Messiah coming up in both the ox and the yam. And this connection to the Messiah, I do a bit more in here. I just explain how pi is connected to in Genesis, when it says about the river that came out from Eden to water. It had 4 heads. There were 4 rivers that came from it. The first one is Pishon, Pishon. Pishon Hasevi Koch Eretz Chavila. Pishon that circumvented the whole of the land of Chavila where there was gold. And I'm writing another book about gold, which is connected to this this river. Pishon is, in Hebrew the word pi, Pishon, it means mouth. Pi is mouth. In Hebrew we write it Pei Yud, and that means a mouth, or Peh is a mouth. P is also a mouth of. So if you can see that the actual letter Pei is that it signifies a mouth. Okay, the actual letter Pei it represents a mouth. So what we have there is a river where it goes around, and if you remember, we had, when I did about the circle, the large value of the word circle is 356. So circle was 356. That's a large value. And Pishon, this is the mouth of Shon. Shon is 356, which is connected to the circle. And the first time the letter Samach, which we've also explained to you, represents a circle. That's the letter Samach, which is the 15th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And the O is the 15th letter of the English alphabet. Both represent a circle. The first time the Samach appears in the Torah is in the word Sovev. It says, now Pishon has Sovev called Eretz Yisrael, goes around. The word Sovev means to go around. The dreidel, which I talked about in the last lecture, is called a sivavon in modern Hebrew because it goes around. It's a spinning top. So Sovev and the Samach goes around. And this is the first thing. This Pishon goes around this land which contains gold. Okay. So that's all I'm going to talk about that. You're very welcome to look further into this. And I'm going to do a little bit in another lecture about the number 5, or about this particular slideshow. Yeah, you can do your own little research. What is this C all about? What's it there for? Why has it got 12 oxen to it? It was destroyed and broken up by Nebuchadnezzar's army when they destroyed the first temple. So we don't have this Yam Shel Melech, this Sea of King Solomon, anymore. So, but we do have the recorded documentation. It's in the Bible. It's there clear. And King Solomon knew pi to 4 decimal places. Not even according to what Rabbi Nehemiah says, that whose measurement gives the 2 decimal places, which is pretty good, but it's actually hidden there an even more accurate number. And it's there in the creation story, the power to bend. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll do more in another lecture.